So welcome to the 13th annual Air Quality and Health Workshop here in Vancouver at the Sheraton Vancouver Wall Centre Hotel. I'm sitting here with Dr. Frederica Perera of Columbia University. She's come here all the way from New York, so it's kind of great to have her here. She's been published in over 300 articles, I believe, and she's been decorated with more awards and recognitions than I have time to list right here. So it's a great honor to have you here and joining us to do this.
My pleasure.
All right. So she's here to talk about neurodevelopmental effects of air pollution. So why don't we get right into it? So what is a neurodevelopmental effect, and how is air pollution involved with that?
Neurodevelopmental effect is an effect that reflects a damage to some process in early brain development, some alteration that can be manifest in different ways, either through cognitive deficits or intellectual problems or through behavioral problems.
That's really interesting. And you mentioned in the young, so why are young children so particularly susceptible?
We consider the first 9 months as well as very early childhood to be particularly vulnerable. During pregnancy, the brain is developing very, very rapidly. There are an estimated, I think it's 80 billion neurons, nerve cells in the brain, in the adult brain.
It's amazing.
And most of those are formed during the first part of the fetal period of development. So, and it's a very highly choreographed process, sort of like a ballet, where certain things have to happen. And certain genes are expressed, and others are silenced, and different signaling molecules are doing their work. And the cells are rapidly dividing, which means that since this is exquisitely complex and it's very important to have everything taking place at just the right moment in time. You can imagine that some toxicant, either a chemical or some other stressor, could interrupt or disrupt that normal programming and cause disruption in the normal development of the brain.
Absolutely.
And they can do this in a number of different ways, through direct damage to DNA, through changing the programming of genes, to disrupting normal hormonal functioning and so forth.
And that sort of leads to sort of the next phase. It's a bit of a sensitive topic in some worlds. Is what about autism? Have you found a link to autism as a result of this?
Well, our center, which is the Columbia Center for Children's Environmental Health, hasn't directly studied autism, but other studies have reported that they've seen some associations between autistic traits and various measures of air pollution. All the studies haven't been consistent, but I think the evidence is suggestive that there's something there.
Why would you say the study of neurodevelopmental effects is important? Like, why is this something that we should all care about? Why is this something we should know about?
We should care deeply about the problem because once there is damage to the developing brain, that can manifest not only in childhood through lower IQ or lower other aspects of cognitive functioning or behavioral problems, possibly like ADHD or other attentional problems, anxiety, depression, those sorts of things, but can also have an impact throughout that individual's life course. So affecting the well-being and functioning during later childhood, adolescence, and even through adulthood. So it's a very important message that if we learn how to prevent very early damage to the developing nervous system, protect that child, there will be benefits over the full life course.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is important information really for anybody, particularly soon-to-be parents or new parents. All good things to know and look at. Fortunately, we're out of time right now, but if you would like to know information, obviously in far more detail than we're able to get into right now in these few moments, we will have all of Dr. Perera's slides and decks from today's presentation on our website for you to take a look at. And I want to thank you for taking the time to do this.
Well, you're very welcome. I would also mention that we have a website for the Columbia Center for Children's Environmental Health, And it has, and that's ccceh.org. And it has tips for parents.
Perfect.
Also information that policymakers will find useful on ways to prevent harm to the very young from environmental contaminants and other kinds of stressors to which they're so vulnerable.
That's awesome.
I'd like to, even though this you'll have to paste it in, go back to your question on vulnerability. I gave you a rather long roundabout and probably should answer that a little bit better. Do you want me to answer that?
Absolutely.
I think you asked me why do we worry about the very early developmental stages?
I might have asked you why we felt the young children were particularly susceptible. Was it that question?
Yes.
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 So why do you feel that young children are particularly susceptible?
Well, we now know a lot about the vulnerability not only of the young child but the developing fetus, so that period of time from conception all the way through the early childhood years. And we know that the brain is developing very, very rapidly during that time. Most of the 80 billion neurons in the human brain are being formed then.
Wow.
It's a very tightly programmed process. Wow. And that the fetus and young child don't have the same ability to rid their bodies of toxic chemicals and also to to repair any damage to targets like DNA. So they're more vulnerable to the impacts. They also have many years to develop over which damage incurred very young can manifest later on as disease or impairment.
Wow.